Hi, Peter. Good. How are you this morning?
Anywhere?
Yeah, help yourself, and Jeff and Anne will start up a little presentation here in just a minute. But yeah, make yourself at home. This hub might be what's causing my problem both the other day and today, because I'm not getting the not detecting the USB inputs.
That's what I'm saying.
Sound check, sound check. Pick up at this level, pick up at this level. All right. Good morning. Thank you for viewing this Zoom stream of a Scottsville community meeting held in the Victory Hall Theater on Saturday, January 15th, 2022. My name is Matt Lawless. I serve as Scottsville Town Administrator. Our facilitation will be starting in just a few moments. We've got a good crowd in the room here, but our ability with this AV to take comment online is pretty limited. So we'll be in view only mode for this one. We'll have some screen sharing running as well as camera recording the comments around the room. Thank you very much. We'll get started in just a few minutes. If you're watching on the recording in the future, I think we'll come to order at about 11 o'clock. So you might want to skip ahead on your video about 5 minutes while we continue to get set up and come to order. Thank you.
Yeah. The poster boards, I guess. Yeah, we've got those under the table if we need to use. So maybe got more text. We can certainly tack more stuff up. Yeah.
If we towards the end can say, okay, here are 5 things probably more detail on some of those, but right. So that might be a good place. I mean, we get to that point. I know we got a couple. One of them is the marble. I could see that being a valid.
I'll show you around here.
Yes, yeah.
So this is running. Right. I introduced it. It's set up as muted there. Okay. If we need to change that, I think you know how to run that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you can screen share Take your pick as you're sort of piloting of like move the camera around the
Right.
room versus share the screen.
Right.
You've kind of seen me do that of
Yeah.
like most of the attention is to the screen and share the
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
But what's on here is what's being recorded, right?
Right.
So you're
Yeah.
you're kind of editing the YouTube on the fly. of
Exactly.
Where
Yeah.
you want the camera to be.
Yeah.
I assume your presentation has a few minutes, so we'll mostly stay on that tab
Okay.
and move through his
Sounds
slides.
good.
But if you need to like Google anything and put that up there, you can do that.
As far as advancing,
I can hand you the mouse if you're doing like a, you know, or you can sit here and run through it if you want.
You can scroll on this
okay.
if you want.
All right, yeah, that might be.
But once if you've got the mouse, you can't do any camera work.
And do you want to welcome people first?
Good job.
Got a minute or
Do we
two.
have a sign-in sheet? Do you want to start one?
Yes.
I didn't look for it. I have a notebook in my bag though.
Yeah, I got some notes. I'll put these on the
Available to 1, 2, 3, 4.
I think they're everywhere.
I was just thinking, I haven't claimed it.
So again. So reiterate. Jeff.
All right.
Time. Good morning. It's so good to see everybody here. Thank you so much for coming out on a Saturday morning to work on some Scottsville community business. My name is Matt Lawless. I'm the town administrator here, and I'm very glad to see so many neighbors, council members, business owners, and I'll be glad to introduce the facilitator team who's helping us today. Town council has a couple of important decisions ahead of them, and they think it's really important to get the word out as well as they can and work with neighbors in making the best decision possible. I'm not trained as a facilitator, and my degree is not in urban planning, so I want to get some help in those two areas. Jeff Sadler comes to us from Richmond. He's a veteran administrator in the State Department of Housing and Community Development and has done this kind of work all over the state on his own and advising localities how to do it best. And Darby is an urban planner who has done all kinds of work in community revitalization in Richmond, including in the local food sector and community agriculture, something we care about. So I'll let them say a little bit more about their work and get to it. Chris Waring and I will mostly be in support on this. We'll be happy to answer technical questions as the day goes through if we know something about Scottsville that's helpful, but mostly we'll be trying to take notes and track what we've got, and we'll report out the results of this meeting to town council at their meeting on Tuesday. So we'll have some direct follow-up from what we do today. I really appreciate y'all's participation and involvement, and we'll get to work. Thank you.
All right, well, great, thank you. I am Jeff Sadler. And I appreciate you all coming out today and seeing. I spoke to some of you all on the phone. And what I really want to get across today I can tell you from those phone conversations, there were at least 6, if not 7 or 8 developments that people had in their mind. So what I want to do first off, is we're going to go through what actually is proposed and some of the impacts. We're also going to get a little bit of background about where Scottsville stands. Ann's going to be working with me on that. After that, we want to answer questions. But what we want to get to at the end of about 75 minutes is comments and suggestions. And so, I want to sort of set the stage that these are proposals and that the council can put conditions on those special use permit. However, if the developer feels that those suggestions are too onerous, they can abandon the project. Or my understanding is that they by right can build up to 13 houses on that lot. And then there's kind of no control of what happens. So, I'm not here to say this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. It's more just to tell you what's been proposed and then get the comments back so that as a community, you can have input on the future. Does that kind of make sense? All right. Well, I don't like standing up on the stage, so I'm going to be out here. But to remind myself about what I'm supposed to be talking about next, I am going to turn my head. So if you have trouble hearing me, just make sure you know. I don't think we're going to take time at the beginning to do personal introductions, but when you get to a question, maybe you can say your name and whether you live in the area or have a business or both or something like that. Does that sound fair? All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. So let me figure out if I can, which way is the right way to turn? Oh, that's it. All right, so first thing is with the census, there has been a decline, a 7.4% decline according to the census in the town's population over the last 10 years. This could be for a variety of reasons. It could either be people are moving out. It could be that household size is shrinking. It could just be that your population is older and therefore has kind of aged out for a couple things. One is having appropriate housing. Older houses are not necessarily easy for people with limited mobility to use. It could also just be that people eventually pass on, and if they're not replenished, you end up with this. I'm not sure this is a long-term trend. Looking at it, it seems that Scottsville has been between 500 and 600 fairly consistently. Is this just a one-year blip? We don't necessarily know, but it is definitely a decline. And did I skip some here? Okay. So this is what we have also according to
This is American Community Survey,
the American Community Survey.
which is this one.
There are 301 housing units in Scottsville, of which 43 are vacant, so 14%. So the question is, why are they vacant? Is it that they are people's second homes? Is it that they are unfit? Maybe they have not been kept up. Is it just that somebody inherited it and nobody lives there and they don't know what they want to do with it long term? So we don't necessarily know those. Typically, a good portion of any community's housing stock is what would be considered unfit. It hasn't been maintained. It may not have proper insulation. Of the 43 houses, I can't tell you specifically what that would be, but typically, even of your occupied, some portion of that is what would be considered unfit. People are living in it, but it's probably not appropriate housing. And how we get to that, this is the only thing you found on Zillow, correct? One house for sale. I could tell you just driving through, I saw 1 or 2 others for sale as well. So maybe Zillow doesn't have everything, but very limited available housing stock. This is what I really wanted to look at, is the age of the housing stock. So 40% of your housing stock is 80 years or older. so built 1939 or older. Those would be most of your historic homes, your older homes, the more original homes. But 44% are built between 1940 and 1980. So those are just old houses. Many of those were war manufacturing homes and post-war homes that were not built to last 50 plus years. You can make any house last as long as you want if you keep it up. But the building standards were typically during that period, I don't know what the right term would be, but maybe not as strong, I guess I'd say. But zero, according to the research, zero houses, which I don't believe it's truly zero, but zero houses have been built since after 2009. And then, so that's kind of the background. I'm gonna let Dan talk a little bit. Right? You're doing this part of mine.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So again, we just want to give you some background on the planning work that the community's already done. There's been public input for a mixed use, mixed income study that was done a couple of years ago. There was a survey as part of that and a lot of market research as to whether or not it would be appropriate to do a mixed use development in the former tire factory site. And a lot of that report covers the area that the Bird Street development is being proposed right now. So in a nutshell, if you take away the one takeaway that I had from the survey data, the general public input was that 24% of people think it's appropriate for Scottsville to have more small, affordable single family homes, 2 or 3 bedrooms. And then 19% of people that responded to the survey said that mid-sized single family homes, about 3 bedrooms, are very appropriate for Scottsville. And senior living, 14%. And again, we talk about this idea that as populations age, it's really important to be able to age in place. Just because you don't want to take care of a 5,000, 4,000 square foot historic home doesn't mean that you need to leave your community. So there need to be options, and that's 14% of people saying that the most important housing type that needs to be available is for senior living. And so just keep that in mind as we look at the proposal. Again, there was a small area plan for this area of the town done just 2 years ago, correct? And the idea, this basically is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the small area plan because there is a dearth of affordable, depending on how you define affordable, but homes that teachers, firefighters can live in, young families, so that people can move here. And again, as we talk about aging population and population decline, there's an opportunity to have a bit of new blood injected into the town.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to talk about affordable housing. So when you say affordable housing, everybody has something different come into their head. What we talk about for affordable housing right now is housing that is affordable for people to move into. That varies by community to community. It varies within a community. Roughly speaking, to build a new home right now, it's $160 to $200 per square foot. The target pricing that I was told that we're looking at here to be affordable, like at the top end of affordable, is $250,000 to $300,000 for a house. Is that approximately correct, Matt?
It's gone up recently. I think that's gotten a little bit harder in the last couple of years. The price of everything has gone up.
Yeah.
What used to be lumber, labor, under 300 is hard. And I pushed that a little bit higher.
Well, but as far as the community, what would be considered?
Like, yes.
Yeah, so that would be sort of the target. So generally what that means is 1,200 to 2,200 square foot home, depending on the trim levels and the amenities that go with it. Garages are $30,000 to $45,000, depending. I mean, that's for like a 1-car garage, 1.5-car garage is adds $30,000 to $45,000 to a house. And that's, kind of vinyl trim on it type thing too. That's not a fancy garage here. Roughly though, what you can get for that is a 2 to 3 bedroom. You're not going to get any huge master bedroom suites. but you'll also get 1.5 to 2 bathrooms with that. Now, if you go with a semi-detached, so that would be, you know, a side-by-side or a 1/1 duplex or triplex, you can reduce those costs for a couple reasons. But you have shared walls, you have shared fuel costs down the road because you're not heating 4 walls, you're heating 3 walls basically at that point. So that's just kind of the basics of where the market is. And that kind of sets up what we have. Now, we're going to see some pictures of homes. These are homes that you could buy at roughly this price range. These are not homes that have been presented by a developer here. So I want to make that very clear. I'm just trying to get everybody to understand what you actually get for that with these pictures. Here is the layout that is proposed. The one thing that's missing from this part is there is an alley that runs behind the homes that are on Bird Street. So they would have rear automobile access. This is a rendering of the type, a mix of homes. So that 2-story house is, I think, 1,800 square feet, roughly speaking. That's going to be at the top end of the affordability range. The smaller ones are about 1,200 square feet. There's still 2 bedrooms. Some of them are actually 3 bedroom and 1.5 baths. Some are 2 bedroom, 2 baths. But it gives you a sense of this is what a community could look like in there. Here's a kind of from the top view. The idea is a mix of styles that would not recreate what you currently have, but could complement what you have. Of course, that part is not in the proposal, but that is something to think about when you look at conditions that might go on. I think front porches, if that's what you want, would need to go on, possibly materials for the facing of the house. But remember, of course, every condition that you put on, some are very important and some of them are very nice to have, but may make the project unfeasible potentially. I can't remember which way I'm going. Okay. So just again, the proposal does require trees and sidewalks. This is Nationwide is a home builder. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I've worked with them before. I'm not advertising for them. I'm just saying that this is kind of where we kind of got the general idea of what's affordable here. And I know you probably can't see from back there, but this is the general layout. You know, they're quality, but they're not big. As you can see, this would be a duplex option, split down the middle. And of course, you know, this is just what they have. You could have the doors on the sides. You could have the porches wrap around a little bit if you needed to. Again, it's just a mirror image. There's no great rooms here in these homes at this price point. And then this is the Blenheim Road as it's proposed. And so Blenheim Heights, I think, is what they wanted to call it. Again, these are a little bit different. One of the things that we have, I don't know what that was. One of the things we wanted to think about is what is the neighborhood like up there? Most of the houses up there have accessory garages. So like an outbuilding with a garage, or over the years, they built garages on the side. So we were trying to think through, the lots are a little wider. There's a little more room for that. Is that appropriate for that neighborhood? I mean, I would think yes, but you know, that's really for you all to decide what's appropriate. We also looked at some housing options just for a conversation that have what I don't know, has been referred to by as like a granny flat or a mother-in-law suite. So basically a side part of the home that is a suite where somebody's parents who may need a little more assistance could live. Or your kid gets out of college and they don't have a job yet, you can ship them over there. So one or the other. But really the idea is that making sure there is a place within the community as people age out of the ability to live on their own. And again, just so on this one, that little part off to the left, that's the suite edition of what it could look like. All right, so I'm gonna make Ann handle the really tough part. The
Okay.
traffic.
So again, at the risk of, this is not scientific. We've had a lot of concerns about traffic. Traffic is often something that people are very concerned about. Sometimes it's good reason, sometimes it's more perception. And so what we wanted to do is, first of all, traffic impact analyses are extremely math heavy. They're extremely specific, and they should be done with great care over time. But for this, I just want to give you all a rule of thumb, just to first something to put in perspective of what we would be looking at for traffic. So again, this is Valley Street, just north of Main Street. It currently has 6,200 cars per day. These are obviously people that don't live here, that are moving through town. And there are a lot of positives to this, because I understand that you have a lot of the downtown businesses have a lot of outside customers, and so that's very positive. But it's definitely more than people who live in town. So if you estimate, I'm going to explain my math here. The Institute for Transportation Engineers, they have very complex processes for traffic impact analysis, but a good rule of thumb that planners use is that each household at a maximum will generate 10 car trips per day. And so that means, let's say you've got a 4-family household. You have a mother, father, 2 kids, right? So there's a trip to work, a trip home, a trip to the store, a trip home, a trip to school, a trip home. Whatever that ends up being, the general rule of thumb is we're estimating 10 trips, a maximum of 10 trips per household per day. Okay. So if we have on Bird Street, if we have 48 new homes, 48 times 10 is 480. I'm going to come to a conclusion. You don't have to follow all of the math. So again, 480 is 7.7% of 1,500. Excuse me. Sorry, this slide. I need to fix this. The point is, sorry, we're looking at just an increase of 7.7. That's a typo there. It needs to be 6,200. I apologize, but the math is correct. If you want to check me, please do. But that's a 7.7% increase in traffic. So for that strip of Valley Road, we're not looking at a significant amount of traffic impact. And again, it sounds like I'm trying to, we're here as an objective third party. We're not trying to sell this either way. So Bird Street between Page and Valley, it currently has 1,000 cars a day. And then you're looking at 48 times 10 is 480. That's 48% increase of traffic. So you're looking at an increase of traffic there on Bird Street that's going through the neighborhood to Valley Street. I don't think there's any, no matter what rule of thumb you use, you're looking at a significant amount of traffic increase there. So it's a 48% according to this math, but in general, just know that was probably the most significant traffic impact right there. So VDOT also has numbers for Valley Street below Main Street. That's currently 4,900 cars a day. Again, same thing, 480 cars. That's a 9.7% increase in traffic, and I don't think that would be really significant. So just using this general rule of thumb, putting something in perspective, we are looking at very nominal increases to the amount of traffic on Valley Road, and a fairly significant increase in traffic to Bird Street between Page and Valley. Again, so for Blenheim, it's currently 1,500 cars per day. There are 25 units proposed times 10, 250. 250 is 16% of 1,500. Again, you don't have to follow all the math, but we're looking at a maximum of a 16% increase in traffic. So objectively, generic rule of thumb. Again, this is not a VDOT engineered traffic study, just a planner's back of the envelope estimate.
Now, does that include that number you UPS trucks, garbage trucks, school buses, repair people.
It doesn't, and that's actually an extremely good point. I promise you, I do not want to get into the weeds in terms of traffic here. I just want to give you some kind of rule of thumb perspective on the percentage increase. So you could do the same thing, for example, and you could say, it may be that one of the conditions is there needs to be a traffic impact analysis done, a professional. It may be that one of the conditions of the special use permit, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it may be that having the developer pay for a traffic impact analysis that would then incorporate all of the details of UPS trucks, deliveries, etc. So, and again, I think that's where we're going with this conversation is what do we need to have in order to make sure that the town understands the impacts of the development, both the positive and the negative, and understand what conditions would be put on that special use permit. So that's my way of saying back of the envelope isn't covering that, and it may be that that's information that we need.
Well, I think there's another part there. I'm just trying to think that through. Is that yes, trucks probably does make sense, but are the garbage trucks not already going that way? I mean, I guess that would be the question. I don't know. So yeah, that's why the actual study.
Yeah. Short answer is more data is needed in that.
Well, I mean, as far as garbage providers go, there are several, and they come on different days of the week.
Gotcha.
So we have garbage trucks coming down that way at least 3 times.
Thank you.
That's it for our presentation. The rest we want to have a productive conversation about concerns, about support, about oh, do you want to take
Oh,
over?
no, that's just the same. Can you guys put up
The one that we have
the
here?
one that has trails?
Oh yeah, but here, so put your mouse back.
Yeah, Matt, I might need your hand with it.
So I
This
guess big picture, not for
Did you say bird or
project
blind?
specific yet. Clearly,
Bird.
we have at least one person that has said the traffic may be a concern. Was that a site-specific concern or for either or both?
Asking you a question.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So for, you had brought up traffic, and so my question is that a general concern or is it a concern for one location or the other?
Well, I live down that way, so I'm speaking specifically there,
It's
but
not
I know
color.
that
It's not
people
my
that
favorite.
live down Blenheim have concerns as well. And part of the problem is that we have very old antiquated roads. And this is not necessarily just about traffic, but how we're going to be able to accommodate stuff like increase things, especially things like UPS buses, garbage trucks, and school buses. And the way to get out of Bird Street is also not easy. So these are things that I think, yes, I am.
So both locations.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
This concern has been brought up over and over again, get into all the time stuff on the planet, or it wasn't just one individual. Part of the reason that part of these concerns are just a very small part of the potential of the entire development, just like in Blenheim. We're talking about a couple of acres, and we've got 50 acres right now allocated to that. We multiply all that out, now it becomes a really big concern. Blenheim also has a problem of it's 35 miles an hour. This is something that was done on the test. When you look at it, the speed limit changes right there. You've got a deceleration zone in there. Actually brought up by the person on the planning board who lives in what we call Paulettsville, concerns about that. So the issue too is we're getting very limited numbers, but not a whole plan. Because we don't know the whole plan. And so when you start saying there's only going to be 48 homes, that's not necessarily true. You said it's going to be 24 homes at Blenheim, that's not necessarily true. And so we have to piecemeal these impacts into it. So there's a lot of other concerns that have been expressed, not just by one individual. This has been expressed over and over again at the public hearings.
Oh, right. I was
It's not
trying,
just one thing.
right. I was trying to make sure. So what we're trying to do here is catalog each of these and hopefully prioritize the questions and concerns and really getting to or some suggestion. And I will say that these are specific special use permits and they do not authorize anything in the future that will have to come understanding is that special use permits are not legally precedent setting. Now, you can refer to it and say, well, you allow this, why don't you allow the other part? But it is not a legal argument. And so these are very specific about these projects, not potential future, which would have to be addressed in the site.
But may I ask a question? May I just ask a question so I have some background? We've heard this before, but can you tell me more about, is it just that the property owner owns more property, or is there some other reason that people believe that this is the first phase of many phases?
Well, right now, that property right there only represents half of the property.
Right.
He has, when asked whether or not he would donate the back part to the town, his engineering department made it quite clear we want to keep that for future development.
Okay,
When you get up on Blenheim, he has a 50-acre area that he
Okay.
has the right to build 33 homes, but hasn't built in 20 years. He hasn't done anything. And he's saying, I'm gonna do this little section, and if it sells, I'm gonna continue to do little sections. So to sit there and say, yes, you're 100% right, that's a definition of special use, it also ignores the fact that it's very logical that this is gonna go forward. And to start plugging little pieces in to allow it to become a problem is the main issue. When you get down to Bird Street, the other problem is what we call a pinching point. And it's right in front of the library.
Mhm.
You got a drop off to the left, and you've got a drop up to the right with an oak tree. There's no place except for right there, barely 20 feet, the minimum requirement by law. That's where the library parks, that's where kids come and go. There's no place to put a sidewalk. All the traffic, not only what's in special use, but what possibly, as they indicated, we'd like to do more with, has to go through that pinching point. So to say, well, it's really not nominal down Valley Street, also is a lack of understanding of what that road is on Valley Street to Bird to get into Valley Street. You're parking on both sides. This is where we have our accidents. This is where it takes forever to get out, and you're going to pump all that there. So I get that you're playing numbers, which I get. And the other question is, are those numbers based on the 2017 study? Or somehow
the traffic
recent
numbers?
study?
I just want to be really clear. Those are back of the envelope planner numbers, not traffic engineer numbers that I just, as a starting off, and they're based on 2020 AADT, average annual daily traffic comes from VDOT.
Okay, thank you.
And that nobody else was involved other than me looking at VDOT numbers.
Could I address the traffic problem?
Sure.
Okay. I'm Larry Barnett. In the early 2000s, I sold the Rittenhouse construction site, which is 9 acres. It's zoned for multifamily. A couple on James River Road bought it. They wanted to build 18 townhouses. Half of them for old people like me, 85 years old. They had a main bath on the main level. There were 3 levels, 1,800 square feet. They were going to price them to $190 to $200,000. The town turned it down because of the traffic, for God's sakes. And we appealed it to the planning commission. We appealed it to the town council. And I said, even if 18 townhouses, even if you've got 2 people driving cars, you're talking 36 cars. Oh no, they turned it down. For 20 something years, we need more people and more people need housing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's
I have several issues. One, piggybacking off after this gentleman over here. I'm worried about this becoming a slippery slope. This has been called historic Scottsville. It has been around since the 1700s. Okay, so that's my first thing. Another thing is how this is going to affect schools and students getting to schools. I live on Blenheim Road, and I'm the first class who went all 4 years through Monticello High School. By car, it took me 20 minutes to drive there. By bus, it was 40 minutes. And that's all the way down there. So if you're talking about Valley Street, that's going to be a lot longer for those children to try and get to school. And again, historic Scottsville, you are making it look like Charlottesville, which has completely changed. I understand there needing to be housing. I really do. I'm just worried about it becoming a slippery slope and what's going to be done to stop that from happening.
So, one of the things on that I'm looking to get is that if they're understanding that there likely needs to be additional housing, either to replace other housing or different types of housing, but how does that work in this? And so I'm certainly not discounting what you're saying. I may or may not agree because it's not my place to agree or not. You know, I'm just asking the question, what suggestions would come from that would allow for housing that would still complement the historic nature of the community?
I would say limited housing,
Yeah, limited
not
housing.
the density that they're talking about. 48 of Bird Street.
Okay, so and
We don't want to. And that's horrible. That's happening.
Have you tried to speak to the, you were talking about houses that aren't being used now? Have you tried talking to the owners of those houses and maybe those could be broken up into senior living, the way that Scottsville Elementary School was turned into senior living and low income living? Has that
I
been
certainly
possible?
haven't, because that's not within the scope of what I was asked to do. But
Okay, do you know if that has happened? Let's put it.
I do not know, but my guess is that it.
I can speak a little bit to repair work. Yeah, we have an architectural review board in town that within the historic district helps to assure the maintenance and, you know, quality look of the historic buildings. And in our historic district, we've got 17 historic houses that we call poor condition, where they're open to the elements, they have structural problems, and they really need major work. And the ARB works on enforcement of those to try to get those fixed. None of them are big houses that you know might turn into 4 different apartment kind of things. They're mostly the smaller ones, cottage or bungalow style. They need major renovations. That's a lot of times it's an expensive project. A couple of them I don't think we can save. So of those 40, those include the new Airbnbs that are in the community. Like they're available, but they're not family houses. And then a couple that we're probably going to lose, and a dozen that we could fix up and turn back into family houses.
I want to come back, but I know somebody over on this side, they're being raised a lot of that. Did they leave?
That was me.
Okay.
Everything's kind of been touched on. I'm gonna.
Okay. All right, yes, sir.
Yeah, just to clarify, I know we're talking about the need to build homes. Between 3 properties owned by the Virginia Land Company, which is 80% of our town's developable land. They already have the right to build 74 homes, and they haven't done it. So we keep talking this in circles. They have the right to build, they can build, they just don't build. The other thing too is that, as you pointed out, the renditions are pretty and everything, but all we're doing is determining how many building lots a person can get off of the property that we've already given them permission to build in the first place that they haven't done. So all those pictures are really nice and all that kind of stuff. I see some of those buildings that would probably take 2-3 lots to build on. I see that I know in there that there's supposed to be 8-foot setbacks. That's it. Those pictures show a lot more than 8-foot setbacks. I'm glad that there's sidewalks. Originally, what was proposed to the planning board had no sidewalks, and we were told the only way to keep the roads safe was to make them as small as possible because that would reduce the speed. So those pictures aren't really what was presented to us. And unfortunately, we also know that the person who's asking for this has no pictures because there's no plan for that. Well, all we're talking about is how many lots and what lot size we can do. But development can be done, and development has been in the power of this owner for decades, and they haven't done it. So we got to stop talking about that. I'm glad that Matt trying to clarify with the 40 homes that are in. A lot of them just aren't residential, as you pointed out, Airbnbs and stuff like that. So there are people that own homes that are renovating. There are people that have apartments above that they're planning on renovating and they're not built right now. But to say that the house has 40 homes that are empty is kind of misleading. I'm glad that was clarified.
So just to clarify on that, all the homes that we presented were presented because they did fit in the. lots.
They did fit the
They are
40-foot lot, the 40-foot lot width by 100-foot deep. We did show a 15-foot front yard setback. And that can be determined by the conditions of the SUP.
And it'd be 8 foot on each side. That leaves 24.
So, which again, you know, I'm not trying to say that these are the houses. Just that these fit those lots and the price points. However, again, while yes, we are talking about the number of houses, we are also talking about any additional conditions to the point of helping them to better complement the historic nature of the community, access those types of things. So, but getting to the big point is what I'm hearing on here is just the number. And getting also to the point of, if we talk specifically about Bird Street, my understanding is that by right, they can build 13 houses. If, let's say, there was 48 houses, I'm gonna do some rough math, so it'll be a little bit off. But if we just rounded the 48 for math purposes only to 50, at $300,000 a house, which is very difficult to build a new house for $300,000. I mean, it's shockingly expensive to build. That's 15 million, is that correct? By $15 million in sales. You know, so then if you're talking about putting 13 homes on there, do you think that price point is going to be closer to the 300,000 or closer to the $1 million that gets you closer to 15 million? That's, I think, what the trade-offs are, is that with the special use permit of some sort, and I'm not saying this specific proposal, you do have some control by putting some conditions in. If those conditions, if the developer feels that those conditions are too onerous, however, they can go to buy right, which means they can build 7,000 square foot houses on 2-acre lots. And the question then is, which is preferable? And I'm not here to tell you which is preferable. I'm just saying that that is the range of options that are kind of out there. Yes, sir.
Our area is surrounded by a minimum 2-acre lots. I don't see too many $1 million houses. We don't have $1 million house in this town. I understand your point, but I think that's one side, maybe a little bit older and effect. But that's a possibility. It's also a possibility that these lots will sit vacant like they have for the last 20 years. That's a possibility too. I just don't think it's realistic to say if it's an acre and a half, it's going to be $1 million. That's
right. I'm sorry. I'm just saying they will not be $300,000 houses because they just isn't.
And 2-acre lots around here, we have $350,000. Rebuild that.
Oh, one of my reasons, the burden that 48 homes is going to place on our community. We do have to do it. Not only that, but there's a church, a historic church, that's also on Bird Street. That's no parking. You can park on the side of the street. Even now, if you come up Bird Street, you have to get to one side of the street, allow somebody to come back down. If I am concerned if we do have a large development, like what does that mean for the road? And if we have to enlarge the road, how is that going to impact our library? Are we going our church? Are we going to lose parking? I mean, these are real issues. And then we talk about the sidewalk if you have a large number. Without the SUP, does the town have to build the sidewalks, or the developer actually doesn't even want to build the sidewalk? So we would have to build the sidewalk in town. And what about the road? And what about the traffic? I mean, burdened with that if we have fewer homes? That burden kind of doesn't relate.
Specifically to the sidewalk, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is it would build the sidewalk in front of the actual Bird Street property. It's connecting that sidewalk from there to the existing sidewalk. It would be the town's responsibility as proposed. So I just want to put that out there because again, that's what the proposal is. So I think we, go ahead.
To the other part of your question, though, if the by right development would occur, I don't believe that there's any condition for a sidewalk. So,
Precisely.
yeah.
So that's where, you know, all this is the discussion. I think all the concerns you guys have brought up are absolutely valid. I don't live here, right? So I clearly don't have the emotional attachment to the community that you all do. I do have a lot of, but I do understand where you're coming from. And so I want to hear your question. And then what I want to do is try and move to, if you're saying we don't want this many houses, what are suggestions for how many houses would would be acceptable? So go ahead.
When you're talking about housing or housing units, is there any restrictions on the type of house? Could it include trailers or modular homes, pre-manufactured?
Exactly.
Definitely stipulation.
That's a very good question. So the question is there any current restriction on what types of homes could be put on here? Now, clearly, if this is the layout, well, the layout that was up there, they would have to fit within that layout, as you mentioned, having at least 8-foot setbacks on the sides, and I don't know if you have.
Trailer would fit those setbacks.
It would.
I'm sorry.
The trailer could easily fit those.
Right.
setbacks.
So
So you could, that's what I'm wondering about. Could people decide, well, I'll do that and put in 48 trailers?
currently, do you have in your zoning, how would you address them?
Yeah. Manufactured modular are allowed in town. You had the count of new construction. The last new house that was built in town, it got its move in last year. It was a little lot off of Poplar Springs. Somebody cut 2 acres. And they did a Clayton Homes double wide and cleared a space, built a little driveway and put the Clayton double wide there. That's legal. So that's a possible outcome of if I bought a lot and wanted to build a small affordable house, the Clayton Yard in Farmville is a place that I could go. And that's not illegal.
And if, in the proposal, was there any restriction against similar housing in the proposal as it reads now?
That's not offered at this time. That might be an idea.
Right.
If you had a strong opinion about that one way or the other.
That's a great addition. I will say that all the houses that we showed, just the nationwide ones, those are manufactured homes. It's a completely different process than what you're probably thinking of it as a manufactured home. But those come and get dropped off and put together once they're there. So there's a wide range. I guess, but that is, if that is a concern, then those are potential conditions that can be put on the SUP.
I totally understand what you're saying. Could you explain that again? I just
What's a new modular like?
Well, they vary. I mean, modular manufactured homes vary from what we would consider a traditional mobile home to what we have showed up here, 2 stories. I mean, they build hotels that way, where they come in on a truss base, they basically bolt them together and put trim around them. So there is a wide range. I just don't want to get caught up in saying manufactured or modular homes because there's a wide range of what that looks like.
Yeah, but wait a second. I'm sorry. But the point is, it's density and that can be done.
It can be
And
done.
that is some of why people have some of the issues that we're talking about. And And if we don't address that, I thought that was part for address
Yeah.
those issues, so we need to get called up on that.
Can we separate density from modular then in this discussion? Does that work for you?
We need to do something to,
Well,
because there's nothing that states what can or cannot go up there.
So what the note I'm taking from this, and I was just trying to clarify specifically, is that there is concern about what type of housing would go in these lots. And that is a very reasonable condition to place, as long as that condition is reasonable, I guess is what I'm saying. So do you guys want to take a couple minutes and think about what a house that you feel like, we're not going to talk about right now. We're not going to talk about 48 versus 36 versus 13, but just what might be an appropriate home style, size, etc. Understanding that right now, side by side is 8-foot setback, front, is there a setback set yet?
Matt Holt had it correct. We got 15 on the front, 25 on the back, 8 on the side. So your buildable space is 60 by 24.
Okay, then I have to say that we actually did 5-foot side yard setbacks on the rendering, so just adjust that mentally.
So I think that's a very valid concern, absolutely, especially considering wanting to maintain historic character. The new homes are not going to mimic the historic character, but what they can do is complement the area. So, and I will get to you in just a second. I did want to come back because it was brought up over here. So the question is, this is the time to say this is a condition we would like to place. If you want to put a condition that says that the house must have a porch, a front porch, that's acceptable. I mean, it may not be acceptable to the developer, I can't speak for that, but that is a perfectly reasonable condition. If you wanted to make sure you didn't have what are known as snout nose houses, which is a big 2-car garage, then the house is behind it, that's a perfectly reasonable condition. I guess is what I'm saying, but those have to be articulated for them to be usable by the city council as they look at this. So go ahead.
I know we're getting kind of bogged down on the housing. And point you put a manufactured single wide or double wide in the slots. Great point. But the simple fact of the matter is there's been other concerns other than what the house is going to look like that have been presented to the planning board and to the town. I hate to think that this whole community meeting is going to be focused on, or led down the path of what will the house look like. Because you keep saying if you want to have control, you have to have, this is our, we put conditions on it. The other way is that you just don't approve 48 homes, right? Those are options too. We're being led down the path of what kind of house, what's your porch, flags on it, all this kind of stuff. And that's kind of minutia because there's so many more issues with high density that we're not talking about yet. And if we got a limited time, which we do, because the town chose to break it up into 3 meetings instead of having 1 meeting, those are going to get bypassed. And I think those are also things that need to be reported back to town council, because that's the whole purpose of this, correct? Is to be able to report back to town council.
So, which is, I mean, yes, and so the question is, if 48 is too many, what is current? What is the right number? What do you think is acceptable? Is 20 or acceptable? Is 15 acceptable? That's what I'm getting at. Or is none of this acceptable? In which case, the builder could, may not build 13 houses without coming through any of this process. Yes.
I'm going to go back to my main concern is the burden on the town. And so my thinking is, at what number of houses can you build that you can build without it burdening the town? In other words, it's like that would not impact the town with traffic. That would not have to feel the town has to be responsible for building the sidewalk without feeling like you've got to take the parking, whatever. But is it really there at St. John's Way because you've got to increase the road there or something? if we can have, right now, I think by right, we could do that. I mean, maybe if you increase the number a little bit, maybe you could do that without burdening the town. And I think that the limitations that we're working with is what I'm really concerned with. I feel like it's really great to look at how many houses can be built back there. And I mean, who doesn't want to have housing, but we have to work with what we have also. And we're just a small town. So what is that number?
All right. 13.
Yeah, right.
One impact on traffic. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So what we were looking at before was, for example, when you said there was a 48% increase in traffic on Bird Street. Are we only looking at the number for 48? Do we have any idea what the numbers would be, say, if we passed 20, or if we just did 5 right?
My back of the envelope, it's just really simple math. It's number of homes times 10.
Yeah.
And then as a percentage of existing average traffic. I'm gonna have to,
Sorry, what did you say?
we'd have to, let's go, we could,
1,000 on Bird Street?
Yes.
yeah. mhm.
And, you know, we also
I mean,
know,
I know it's simple math.
It's way oversimplified, as we said, but just
I-
gives you an
I
idea.
understand that, but for all of us who are sitting here right now, and you guys are speaking, for us to sit here and jot the math.
Yeah.
You know, what's an acceptable number?
Yeah.
We have to do the math for 12. we have to do
Yeah.
the math.
if it was
But-
20, it'd
So
be
20 is
200.
200.
Right.
20 houses,
It's 20%.
20% increase.
So 20 houses, 20% increase in traffic. Again, we're just here to get input, but I have a lot of experience with housing developments in multiple towns, including in my town. And I think often people have so many objections that they can't see the positive of it. And then what happens is you lose the opportunity to have an impact on not saying that that's going to happen. But that's been some of my experience is
I
that.
wasn't trying to question it. You know, you're really confused. I was just wondering, you know, we were only looking at it with one specific.
Yeah.
number.
But to go back to,
You know, to say what is an appropriate number, I just didn't know if we had.
Yeah, so one other thing that just as a way of visualizing this is that if you take, whether it's 480 or 120 or 200 trips, and you know that at least one of those trips is likely to be have the heaviest traffic time in the morning and one with the heaviest traffic time in the evening, and then you spread the rest of those throughout a 16-hour day. What does that look like? You know, 200. So if you took, my math is gonna be a little difficult here, but basically 10 trips an hour, 20 trips an hour, that's the trip that we.
Yeah.
It's a way to visualize what that actually means.
And I have found trips per hour and trips per minute to be more useful than trips per day. It's hard for me to visualize 1,000 cars a day. It's easier for me to think about 1 car per minute. And 1,000 cars per day and 1 car per minute are pretty close to the same thing.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think I had a question for you. Since you've been around some other communities, you have experience growth.
Mhm.
Some of the positive things, because one of the things that, and I know you're trying to create the scenario of the town, and we talk about the population, and it's going down, and I'm not we're 500 people, we have a 9 spot. I would argue that we're probably better than we were in 2010, despite the fact that our population with businesses on the street really are here.
Mhm.
That's a positive thing.
Mhm.
The idea of the town quote unquote dying because of that, because of the growth of housing, I don't buy that argument because we have enough of this surrounding area that we seem to have survived. I guess you maybe expand on that.
Well, I think that while there has not been an economic impact study done, right?
No.
Okay, so but theoretically, if you're adding this many homes or adding this many households, this many people, those are people who will be consuming meals in restaurants, who will be shopping, who will be, addition to your church, to donate to your church, to joining your social basically the social fabric of the town. And I'm not, again, I'm trying to be neutral. I just think that there are positive impacts, and then also to quantify, to back to your point, ma'am, to quantify what those impacts are. And that's sort of what I was trying to do with the back of the envelope traffic, is to put it in perspective, and then to say, and to your point, sir, I understand your concern with, keeping going. So if you want to talk about straight line projections, we're not saying the towns, we didn't mean to be doomsday by saying the population is declining, and it could be that it's flat, it could be that it bounces back. But I just think it's important to see things in perspective of the positive and the negatives that a development could bring. And then also, one of the reasons it's really important to talk about concerns and negative impacts is that there's an opportunity then to identify the negative impacts and ameliorate them, to say it's possible to shape this so that we get the positive benefits and then ameliorate the negative benefits. And then maybe find some way to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to amend the comprehensive plan to say that, this amount and further is appropriate, or further SUPs will be judged according to X. So I think that basically by identifying and talking about concerns in a very clear and transparent way, it's not us trying to convince you or shove you down. I mean, we came in as neutral third parties, but what I have seen too is that if people push too hard, and I don't want to be, this has happened in my neighborhood, this is Brook Road development, that the neighborhood pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And then what happened is everything went out the window and it was approved, and it's actually terrible. But so, and that's just me as a neighborhood resident in my town, and as a planner, just to say,
Well, that's what we need to hear, because here's the thing, you only get one shot.
mhm,
Okay. With 500, in my opinion, you only get one shot. Man hadn't took a shot in 27 years I've been in the real estate industry for whatever reason.
right.
Thinks he can take a shot now. How is it special enough for us to let him take a shot?
Mhm.
Or is it not special enough? I'm not saying we can't have some growth, concern on bird, it's there.
I think it's
don't know
real.
what the options, if there was a higher density up there, what options exist? But what is in front of us right now is a special use permit on these two areas. And we have to, you all are tasked with trying to get town council something to go on based on what is there. And we're not getting, I mean, it's a lot of unknowns. We talked about that, and I know that, I respect that, but I mean, my concern, quite frankly, is at a minimum, I mean, I'm not sure that having density to potential have manufactured homes, and I know you can put restrictions, but this is the first time it came up.
Yeah.
Until now, of like, how much has come up? Unintended consequences is what I'm concerned about. I've been coming down to town for over 10,000 days, working every day.
Yeah.
Into the downtown Scottsville area. I'm protective of it. I apologize on that, but I'm protective of it.
I don't think you should ever apologize for being
Well,
protective of your town.
apologizing, but I'm protective. I want what's best for the town, for the visitors, for the business owners, and I think that's what the developer should, or I would hope would be. And the problem is, you don't always get that with the developer. They're in and out. If the project works, that's great. I don't want to hinder them by putting restrictions on them, but if this is a special use permit, maybe we say no more development on the Paulette tract as a special. Maybe we say no more development up there that's going to my protective side of me. Let's make it all rural land, nothing else can go on it. I don't think that's fair to the developer, but I think we have to have these discussions, and I don't want to take in, as you said, in a bad development.
Yeah.
Right. So I live on Jackson Street downtown. I spend every day there. And I really, I love the town the way that it is. However, I think there's some areas that could be improved. I work up at UVA and help our staff find affordable places to live, and a lot of them live in Buckingham because they can't even afford to live in Scottsville. There's very few places here for the people who work in this town to live here. And I see a real need for affordable housing here in some point or another. I think that there's there's definitely a inverse relationship between the fewer number of houses and the more expensive they're gonna have to be. And the fewer we have, the less affordable housing is. So what I agree, I do not want to see this town turn into Keswick or into Crozet, but I don't want to see it turn into Keswick here. I want people who live here to be able to work here and be able to live here. So with this special use permit, the developer has proposed this. We can, as the town council, we can say, we only want to give you 25 houses. We don't have to talk about getting them 36. We can get one, give them 25, we can get whatever we want. And here's the requirements that we have. So what I'd love to see and hear from you all is, what's the vision for you? What would you all like to see? And then we can craft a special use permit that will say, look, if you want it to have one extra house, here's what you have to do. So it's not an either or, yes or no. Here's an opportunity for us to envision what we want to have up there. And that's where these conditions for the houses come in. So the question is, how do you want to have? What do you want them to look like? And you know, we can otherwise we're going to get whatever we're going to get the 15 houses, no sidewalks, no nothing. We're going to do whatever they want to do, and there's nothing we can do. So here's our opportunity to make this into what we want it to be.
May I offer one caveat? So I just want to offer one caveat, and that is that a developer, and again, I don't know this person, we've not interacted with this developer, but the developer will be motivated by a certain pro forma to make a certain profit. And my only concern, just as from my experience, is that you don't want to put so many conditions that the pro forma doesn't work, and then therefore the development doesn't happen.
Correct, but we also have someone else's point. If the developer doesn't want to build what we want in town, then we don't put the permit, and he doesn't, then he walks away. So again, it's what do we as the town want this to be, and this is our opportunity to create something up there, or give someone a vision for it and say, if you'd like to build this, we will support you in doing it. If you don't want to build this, fine, we'll wait for another 20 years. That's not.
Yes, sir.
One, I hear you, Stuart, when you're talking about people living in Buckingham. One thing that I always look at our town, which is what puzzles me about the concept that our town's done, and we have to live in homes. The one thing, and hear me out, because we're talking about the future expansion of all these projects, not limiting it to 24 homes. One thing I keep pointing out, and I don't know if it sinks in or not, maybe I'm wrong, is Scottsville, even in the 90s when we were really good because our economy was good, right? We had less people then than we do now. Scottsville, because of the way the town is, because of the way it looks and everything, is the hub of this entire greater Scottsville area. And I got in trouble for pointing out that the greater Scottsville area supports our town. Not. We're in a unique situation again, because normally a development like that gives us a bunch of real estate tax. We're in a unique situation. We don't get any real estate tax.
For the time being.
Right? I know, but I'm just saying. So the point is, you're saying for people to live, that they need a place to live in town. And what kind of keeps being brought up is we're the hub, and the area around us is what supports us. And there's plenty of space and area and development going around us that provides that home. Because you say, well, Buckingham, well, unless they're out building, most of the homes I saw are less than 3, 4, 5 minutes away from town. And that's why they're buying them, because they want to work in town. So you have to, my question is, how much do you want to lay that responsibility and lay the expense of that onto a town that doesn't have normally real estate taxes and things. You bring up any extra taxes, well, that makes it more expensive to be in town. One of the issues that was brought up again, but hasn't brought up yet, that I'd like to do is homeowners association. That becomes even more expensive. We talk about the expense of stormwater systems, whatever it's called, retention system. Town can't afford to take care of them. The builder refuses to take care of them. So we burden our new people with that. It becomes even more expensive. There's so many different things that doing this, the high density, puts not only on the town, right, the burden on the town, the safety impact on the town, but also on those individuals. And it's no longer what you're calling affordable homes, no longer really affordable. So the point is, you could put 13 more homes in there, and that would fill that area out. I mean, I didn't agree with when we rezoned it. It's a light industrial area. I didn't agree that in the first place. There's never been residential homes up there, so they've never had the right to do that. We changed that. So we interjected that into the plan, which is why they're not in the historical district, which is why the ARB doesn't have any controls over that. Because that never existed. We changed that. But to me, the town is the hub, and we depend, and we provide a service that the entire area supports us with. We don't necessarily follow the concept that we have to build all the worker homes in our town. The town wasn't designed for that. And the surrounding area is, and that's why the surrounding area continues to expand. So I just kind of want to interject that. There's nothing wrong with living 5 minutes away. And we have people living in Savannah, and they're right in our downtown area. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to develop, jam a bunch of people in downtown.
All right, well, we're nearing time to wrap up. I think it's pretty clear that we have, most of the people that are here haven't said anything. So first, I'd just like to acknowledge that. We definitely have heard from several people that they feel like this is too much. What we haven't gotten from this is what we also have a concern about, the style of things. So I guess what I would say is that if you, so basically what we have heard here, except for one person who has said that they desperately need homes. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm reflecting this correctly. There are no, nobody has put forth any conditions that they would like to see on this. What I would like to ask as we wrap up then is that if anybody has any other specific items that would not, try to figure out how to say this right. So basically what we've been left with here is a few people saying not this, but not necessarily offering any other alternatives, which would leave a no on the vote. What I'd like to ask you to do is there are cards and pens in front of you. If you could think of any concerns that you still have that have not been discussed today, or if you just want to say, I too think this is too many things. I'd also like you to think about what a suggestion would be, for what would be enough homes. I understand it may not be possible to know that, right? For, but if we know that 13 would have to be okay, unless they just decide never to, right? But if you feel that 48 is too many, maybe there's a number in between. It suits you, maybe there isn't. Am I being clear at all? Because I don't feel like that. I'm just asking for you to make comments at this point. If you have any additional concerns, please put them down. But what I'm really hoping we can get is I would really like to have a sidewalk that runs the entire way. Or I don't want any more sidewalks because they're going to impinge on their existing properties. Just anything that goes along the place, whatever. Does that make sense?
These lots of stuff that are how wide.
So yeah, that's the other thing. We really mostly talked about Root Street here proposal, but those are 40 feet, correct?
Yes.
So if anybody worked out, take the same, say, okay, 40-foot wide lot is awful narrow. How many could you put if you said, let's make those lots 60 feet wide? So maybe a little bit.
Maybe go into some of the other areas.
What type of, how many numbers you would get doing something like that?
We had a response on that side when Planning Commission voted their recommendation on 36 and 18 instead of 48 and 24. I asked our applicants to generate some new drawings on the site of, okay, what does Planning Commission's recommendation mean for you? And the way that they responded was by keeping the lot sizes small and by making the roads shorter. So they have a economic reason for building less infrastructure. And they think that the best home that they can build and sell is on a small lot. So when we said, okay, fewer houses, what that meant was compressing the whole project and saving money by building less road. And they kept the lot sizes small. And that was what they thought was the most advantageous way to interpret what Planning Commission did, was not to make the lots bigger, but to make the road shorter and keep the lot small.
So if you wanted wider lots, that would be that the lot size is 56.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know what the specific right number for that would be, but that would be a type of condition. It would potentially reduce the number of houses. Go ahead, did somebody else have a question or comment? Yes, ma'am.
And nothing has been said about the whole infrastructure, namely the broadband water and sewer. That is way below what it should be anyway. They have problems, they can't afford it, but to support us anyway. What about broadband water and sewer? They've been even contacted and said, well, how much is this gonna cost? Is it cost the town? Is it gonna cost the county a tremendous amount of money to have all these extra homes? I mean, I want homes, I want something, but I don't want a huge development down here.
I'll tell you
And I
what
think
my understanding.
money is important.
So my understanding, and please correct me if I have this wrong, my understanding is that this area is roughly using 1/3 of the maximum capacity for the water and sewer that's in place. So this would not be enough of a development, even combining the two, to make a whole lot of impact on the capacity. Now, each of these places would have to, they would have to put in stormwater plans, which anytime you disturb more than 1 acre in Virginia, either Virginia Department of Environmental Quality or the county or city has to approve it. And the only way a city or county can do it rather than the state is because it's more stringent than the state's required. So there has to be a plan that's submitted to do two things. One is handle the long-term stormwater runoff. And then the other part is silt and erosion during construction as well. So there's a plan for that. And then the running the sewer from the main line is the developer's job.
So how would that be affected by droughts though? Because I know there was a drought a while ago where people just, tried really hard not to flush their toilets. And so that, that can make a big difference. You never know when there's going to be a drought. So how would that make a difference in what you're saying? With the whole only a third being used.
So that's for the treatment, containment, and delivery of the water. So if there is less water available, whether those houses are built there or whether they are built somewhere else in the county that is still served by that area, it would have the same effect. But yes, more people and more is more demand. One of the benefits of having smaller yard sizes is you have less lawn to water. So that is a plus to a smaller lot size. Bigger lot sizes have more grass, etc. I'm not saying that should be a determining factor. I'm just saying these are all true. But yes, more people is more demand.
One other concern about the Bird Street property is, has there been an EPA thing done up there? Because I guarantee that was a rubber plant for years and years, and there has been a lot of talk that there is a problem up there.
So,
from what I understand, nothing's been done.
So they would not be allowed to build until, I don't know that a phase 1 or a phase 2 environmental assessment has been done. But you can't get a construction loan.
So who's gonna have to pay for that? The developer?
The developer pays.
So is that
It
very
is,
clear
well-
that the developer would have to pay for that? Because that was not the impression. I thought he said he wouldn't.
Potentially, the town or the county can apply to the state for the back grant, just, I don't know what it stands for, but and that is specifically to do an assessment of a potentially contaminated.
We could help them if we wanted to, but if we don't, they have to do it. And I've been on the receiving end of this, where I've tried to go to a bank and get a loan, and they say, no, 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 I need to know what that property is worth. And if it's polluted, then it's not worth anything, and I'm not gonna give you your loan. So good luck building anything without a clean environmental.
Well, I hate to say it,
It'll get
because
done.
of the developer that we're dealing with, he has his ways to, get things the way he wants it done. So I just think that's something we need to consider.
Okay, so that's a good example of a condition. If we want to see good, solid, completed environmental reports before we approve a site plan, great, good condition. So the way to phase 2 environmental. I'm gonna jot that down myself.
Okay.
Well, so we're wrapping up. Any last questions, comments before we take a break, and hopefully everybody didn't show up once. Hopefully we'll have more people coming later.
I made that one up because I thought it matched up pretty well with what Jeff was looking at. It's got some ideas for conditions on the front. It's got some numbers of houses on the back and some writing space. So I think this sheet gives you some format for what Mr. Sadler was talking about. Thank you.
That's when you do just that.
The town council meeting is on Tuesday night, weather permitting. So if you want to take it home and think about it and bring it back to me, we'll see. We may need to delay this if we're all out of power again.
One more question, in that report that you did, you said a MUNI report. And it said something to reference a survey that was done. When was this survey?
It was the summer of 2018.
2018? And where did that survey? I never saw.
You had a clipboard in the store, and it was asking where did the shoppers come from.
Oh, that one. Okay. I know which one you're talking about.
Well, thank you all for coming out, and I really appreciate all the comments, all the concerns. I think it's wonderful that you guys all feel involved, and that's the way things work best. So thanks again.
And on behalf of the town council, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. And,
Okay.
I haven't made up my mind about any of this yet, so I appreciate all of your feedback.
We appreciate the town doing this. because
Yes, we really
do. Because this was very necessary. We were not known, it's just completely not known.
I know the 7 p.m. on a Monday.
Yeah, it was very definitely.
Well, thank
So
you for
we're
coming. Very nice to
wrapping
meet
up
you.
the first section. And we'll start the next one. 10 minutes.
Sure, my parents. Gosh, I don't know.
I can collect those, yeah.
Thank you very
absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
Everything else about me is my dad. Straight, so good. Well, very nice to meet you. We'll make it again. No, hello. Nice to meet you. Let me give you my card too.
He's doing a wonderful job.
What's that though? Here's my card. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
He has had some problems. He's 87 and has a heart condition. And it's non-treatable. Dr. Wynn, who's a world renowned cardiologist, said you may live 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Her heart is 15 to 20% normal. Operation. She's been married for, we just had a number very quick.
Hi, how are you? Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Hi, how are you doing? Nice to see you.
Trailers. Okay. And you wrote that here? Okay. Yeah. No, I agree. And it's funny because we have always meant trailers when we say, historically, when we say manufactured homes. But just now, and that's one of the reasons why we chose these as examples.
25 years ago, all the people we knew was really like heroes. We bought, put manufactured units that came in with a big crane, put it together, bolted it together, you walk in, you never tell.
Right. Yeah. And I think that landscaping is changing that because it's more and more interesting.
I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
You see these manufactured trailers, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. I just wanted to make sure I could read your writing. Yes, I can read all of this. Okay.
Kids play a little bit, they have a little bit more room.
I'm just gonna write that down. Okay. This is great. It's nice to see so many people be involved but not be so angry.
One of the places that I think that people really are concerned about, I should say, is actually the corner of where Bird is, Valley Street.
Right.
It's that
Yeah, of
corner
course.
that's really probably
I thought that was gonna work.
the issue.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down too. So the traffic.
You know, the traffic, it's that corner, because coming out from, on Bird Street to make a turn, you have to go left or right, you can't go straight.
Right,
And it's really, could be difficult with the parking on Valley Street to see what's going up and down.
So
Valley
it's
Street.
sight lines.
Sight lines, and it's, and times that traffic can become very difficult. Now, again, I don't know.
What if there were a light at
I
Valley
was gonna
where?
say, I don't know if those people thought of Hawaii or something like that.
No, that's a great idea. That's awesome.
I don't know, you know. You can't change the sight lines because the buildings are buildings, so they're real buildings.
Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday. I went around a blind curve. That some mirrors are helpful sometimes. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, but really a light is probably the most helpful.
Which I know they claim lights cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have to figure out why it costs so much.
Well, it makes sense. The engineering of it, the physical, but that doesn't mean that you can't say it. So, okay, well, thank you very much.
All right, how'd that AV feel for you?
Camera's a little shaky, but
Yeah. Oh, just wobbly.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stop this one and start the next one.
Couple of the PDFs.